Have you ever listened closely to the sound of a dying soul? I do not mean the physical cessation of breath, but the exact fraction of a second when a profound, all-consuming love takes its final, agonizing gasp and drops dead on the floor. Society has lied to us. We have been conditioned to believe that the end of an era, the death of a great romance, must always be announced by a deafening symphony of chaos. We expect glass shattering against the walls, guttural screams tearing through the night, and desperate, tear-soaked pleas echoing down empty hallways. But as someone who has spent years dissecting the darkest, most bruised corners of human behavioral psychology and power dynamics, let me tell you a devastating truth. The true sound of a broken promise, the definitive death knell of a love that has been bled dry, is not loud at all. It is a chilling, suffocating silence. It is the microscopic, razor-sharp clink of a platinum engagement ring slipping from a trembling finger and hitting a cold marble floor. No tears, no rage. Just the terrifying quiet of a heart that has turned entirely to ash. Wolf King Stories warmly welcomes you back to our sanctuary of the mind. If you find yourself captivated by the dark, unspoken truths of the human psyche woven through these tales, please take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Your support is the vital heartbeat that drives this channel to continue unearthing these profound, emotionally shattering narratives. Today, we are not merely recounting a fairy tale. We are stepping into a primal, merciless world that strips human psychology down to its barest, most bleeding nerves, the realm of the werewolves. Here, we encounter the Alpha, the absolute embodiment of dominance, unyielding arrogance, and raw, intoxicating power. And we have the Omega, historically branded as weak and submissive, yet secretly harboring the most formidable power known to existence, the power of bottomless empathy and emotional endurance. Although cloaked in the fantastical hierarchy of wolves, this story is a brutal reflection of our own reality. It is an autopsy of unconditional sacrifice, of how blinding hubris can rot a mind, and above all, the agonizing, beautiful supremacy of knowing when to let go. In our modern society, we often mistake the oppressor for the victor. We assume that the one holding the financial strings, the one shouting the loudest, or the one inflicting the deepest wounds is the one in control. Psychological evidence, however, paints a radically different picture. Ultimate power does not reside in the heavy crown you force upon your own head, nor is it measured by the number of broken spirits kneeling at your feet. True, unassailable power lies in the quiet dignity of a person who looks at the ruins of their own devotion, turns their back on the very place their worth was butchered, and walks away into the mist without uttering a single curse. In the moments to follow, we will dissect a psychological earthquake. We will bear witness to the exact moment an arrogant Alpha King deliberately crushes his empire's most precious beating heart, solely to feed the insatiable beast of his own vanity. We will watch an invincible kingdom crumble to dust, not by the strike of enemy blades, but by the quiet, haunting withdrawal of a single, unassuming shadow. We will explore why absolute silence is the most barbaric weapon against betrayal, and how a shattered soul can resurrect itself from the ashes of abandonment to forge a kingdom of its own. Are you prepared to stare into the abyss of this silence? Let us begin. To understand the agonizing depth of this silence, we must first examine the deafening arrogance that provoked it. In the heart of the most formidable werewolf territory known to our history, ruled an Alpha King named Kaelen, a magnificent specimen of physical perfection and tyrannical might. His empire was vast, his armies undefeated, and his name was whispered with a potent mixture of reverence and terror. Yet, beneath the polished armor of his rule, the true foundation of his kingdom was held together by the quiet, tireless emotional labor of his mate, the Omega. For years, she was the unseen mortar to his bricks. While he conquered territories and spilled blood, she stayed behind to heal the wounded, to soothe the traumatized, and to absorb the heavy, dark energies of a pack constantly at war. She loved him with a blinding, self-effacing devotion, pouring her entire essence into the gaping void of his ambition. But absolute power is a treacherous poison that rots the mind's ability to perceive true value. To Kaelen's distorted psychology, empathy was indistinguishable from weakness. He began to view her gentle nature, not as the anchor that kept his violent pack sane, but as a shameful stain on his glorious legacy. His hubris demanded a mirror that reflected only his ferocity, which led him into the arms of a high-ranking warrior female, a wolf whose fangs were as sharp as her ambition, and whose heart was as barren as winter's stone. The betrayal was not a secretive affair hidden in the shadows. It was a deliberate, theatrical slaughter of devotion. Kaelen orchestrated a grand assembly, forcing the entire pack to bear witness as he publicly severed the sacred mate bond. He stood tall on his dais, his chest puffed with narcissistic pride, expecting his omega to collapse, to weep, to beg for scraps of his affection. He craved the validation of her destruction, desiring to feed his ego with the spectacle of her broken spirit, completely unaware that he was holding a blade to the throat of his own empire. Yet, instead of the anticipated symphony of weeping, the Alpha was met with a weapon he could neither comprehend nor conquer. When the final, agonizing metaphysical snap of the bond echoed through the clearing, a collective gasp ripped through the crowd, but from the Omega, there was absolutely nothing. The psychological phenomenon occurring in that exact moment is one of the most terrifying displays of human, or in this case, lupine endurance. She did not fall to her knees. She did not hurl insults or demand explanations. The Omega simply reached for the heavy platinum insignia of the Alpha's house that rested against her collarbone. With trembling but deliberate fingers, she unclasped it. The sound of that heavy metal hitting the unforgiving stone floor was the loudest noise in the universe, a microscopic, razor-sharp clink that signaled the death of an era. She looked up, and the pack braced themselves for the fury of a scorned mate. Instead, Kaelen looked into her eyes and saw a horrifying, bottomless void. All the warmth, the boundless forgiveness, the radiant love that had illuminated his darkest nights was entirely extinguished. By refusing to react, by denying him the dramatic climax he so desperately craved, she stripped him of his power. She turned her back on the dais, her spine perfectly straight, and began to walk. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, heads bowing instinctively not out of pity, but in unconscious reverence to the overwhelming gravity of her dignity. She walked out of the stronghold, out of the territory, and vanished into the thick, creeping mist of the forest, without looking back a single time. It was the ultimate barbaric punishment, the permanent, non-negotiable withdrawal of her presence. The true agony of psychological amputation is not felt in the fleeting moment the blade strikes, but in the phantom pains that haunt the long, cold nights that follow. Initially, Kaelen reveled in his supposed victory, crowning his new warrior queen and celebrating the dawn of an impenetrable, ruthless era. But an empire built solely on the foundation of fear and superficial strength is a house of cards waiting for the wind. Within months, the insidious rod of consequence began to manifest. Without the Omega's empathetic grounding, the pack's collective trauma festered. The wounded no longer had a sanctuary to heal their minds. The young pups grew feral and anxious. The warriors, lacking emotional release, turned their aggression inward, sparking deadly infighting. The new queen, proficient only in the language of violence, responded to the pack's emotional unraveling with brutal subjugation, further alienating the very people they were sworn to protect. Kaelen watched from his towering throne as his invincible kingdom began to cannibalize itself. A profound, suffocating paranoia settled into his bones. The nights became his greatest enemy. He would reach across the cold sheets, his soul unconsciously seeking the familiar, soothing frequency of the bond he had so arrogantly butchered, only to grasp at empty air. He began to realize, with terrifying clarity, that he was the architect of his own demise. His power had never been his own. It was a magnificent illusion sustained by the tireless grace of the woman he had discarded. The Alpha roar that once commanded legions now echoed hollowly against the walls of an empty castle. He had traded a diamond for a stone. and the psychological torment of his irreversible mistake slowly fractured his mind, leaving a broken king ruling over a graveyard of his own making. While the tyrant drowned in the suffocating venom of his own making, the forgotten shadow was busy weaving light from the absolute darkness. The Omega's journey into the wilderness was not a march toward death, but a grueling, beautiful pilgrimage of resurrection. Stripped of her title, her pack, and her identity, she was forced to confront the rawest, most vulnerable fragments of her soul. In the quiet solitude of the ancient woods, she did not allow her grief to weaponize into bitterness. Instead, she used the agony of abandonment as a forge, tempering her innate empathy with a newfound, unbreakable titanium boundary. Slowly, the forest began to whisper of a sanctuary. Rogues, outcasts, and those broken by the cruelty of traditional hierarchies were drawn to the radiant, unmistakable frequency of a true healer. She did not demand submission, nor did she crown herself with titles of dominance. She built a new paradigm, a pack bound not by fear or bloodlines, but by mutual respect, shared vulnerability, and unconditional support. Her domain flourished, becoming a thriving utopia of emotional and physical resilience that outshone the dying embers of Kaelen's empire. When news of this prosperous, peaceful kingdom eventually reached the ears of the crumbling Alpha King, the final nail was driven into the coffin of his sanity. He realized then that the Omega had never been weak. She was merely resting her immense power in the wrong hands. In the grand psychological tapestry of existence, this is the ultimate truth we must all learn to embrace. True supremacy does not belong to those who break others to elevate themselves. It belongs to the quiet souls who can look at the shattered pieces of their own hearts, sweep them up with bleeding hands, and use them to build a kingdom where they are the absolute, undeniable sovereign. The silence of walking away is not a surrender. It is the loudest, most triumphant declaration of freedom. The saga of the Alpha King and the Omega serves as a profound allegory for the true nature of power and the devastating cost of taking quiet devotion for granted. Kaelen's tragic trajectory exposes the fragility of an empire built on arrogance, violence, and the subjugation of others. He mistook empathy for weakness, failing to realize that his physical might was merely a reflection of the emotional labor provided by the very person he deemed unworthy. His spectacular downfall demonstrates that a kingdom, or a life, devoid of compassion is ultimately destined to consume itself. Conversely, the Omega's silent departure and subsequent rise illustrate the invincible strength of self-preservation and emotional boundaries. By refusing to participate in her own degradation or offer the dramatic reaction her abuser craved, she weaponized her silence, transforming a moment of profound betrayal into the catalyst for her absolute liberation. Her resilience proves that true sovereignty is not granted by external titles or dominance, but cultivated from within. It is the ability to walk away from toxic environments without the need for vengeance, choosing instead to channel that energy into rebuilding a life of peace and mutual respect. Ultimately, this narrative redefines supremacy. It is not the loudest roar that commands the world, but the quiet, unshakable resolve of a soul that knows its own irreplaceable value. The profound lesson: empathy and emotional labor are never weaknesses. They are the invisible anchors of any enduring success. Furthermore, the most powerful response to profound disrespect is not retaliation, debate, or explosive anger, but the absolute, non-negotiable withdrawal of your presence. Your absence is the ultimate consequence for those who do not value your presence. Application to modern life. In your daily life, whether in romantic relationships, friendships, or the workplace, do not allow your kindness to be exploited by those who mistake your grace for fragility. When you encounter environments or individuals who repeatedly disrespect your boundaries or undervalue your contributions, resist the urge to argue, beg, or prove your worth. Instead, channel the Omega's quiet dignity. Protect your peace by walking away from toxic dynamics. Redirect the energy you once poured into unappreciative people toward your own healing, personal growth, and the cultivation of a supportive community. Remember that your value does not decrease based on someone else's inability to see it. Question for discussion. Have you ever experienced a situation where simply walking away in silence was your most powerful and effective move? Please share your thoughts and experiences in the comments section below, so our community can read and learn from your perspective. If you found value in this story and its lessons, please subscribe to the channel. Your support gives us the motivation to continue creating more meaningful and engaging content for you.